For the first time in my history, I'm going to talk about what happened to me when I was a little boy. This is a story of child sex abuse, and I am a victim of that. And it took virtually my whole life to figure it out. And because my entire life was one gigantic trauma response. Now, I don't say that to excuse any of my behavior in the past. I frankly was a reprobate, a womanizer, and all sorts of bad behavior. And I hurt a lot of people that were close to me. Uh, I have discovered that the trauma responses through study and through deconstruction, which is why I'm really able to sit here and tell you. I used to keep very private diaries about my struggles, and I knew something was wrong, and I felt like I was worse than any other human being on the planet. Terminal uniqueness is a behavior of addicts, and I most definitely am an addict. I've been in recovery for a long time, and I certainly know what's going on, and I'm able to, through knowledge, temper those responses to life. But it was not an easy journey for me. And while I look like a villain, my behavior looks like a villain. Uh, I'm really, I'm really just trying to make it through another day. So, the third book that I have written that is unpublished is my memoir, and it's called Dirty Little Boy. One man's war with himself following a terrifying episode of child sex abuse. This memoir contains my diaries. So it's very, very intimate and uncomfortable to share. But I've gotten to the point, and honestly, at age 77, where I don't give much of a crap about what people think anymore. I know me, and I know, the underpinnings, if you will, of my entire life. So I'm going to, again, share a story that I've not shared with anybody, or very, very few, very, very few people. So, and this, I want to say that the book includes two letters from my elementary school teachers. Back when I was going through school in the 50s, the teachers sent home progress reports in the form of a written narrative. So I have these. My mother saved them and gave them to me. So they knew that I had gone through something because my behavior changed as a 5-year-old. So here's what happened. And I want to add this disclaimer up front. I love my mother. She died, a few years ago, and I really did love my mother. I had a great childhood in the 50s and early 60s. So I don't blame my mother for this, and you must understand that. This was a reaction to trauma. And I want to tell you how I reacted because it's important for all of us to understand this terribly sensitive topic. It wouldn't be so sensitive if we would just talk about it. And that's one of my problems with the culture today. So I was 5 years old, very sensitive, bright, creative little boy. This, as described by my teacher, my first grade teacher. So one day in the late spring of it would have to be 1951. I went to my mother because I was badly constipated. And so we went through the process of calling the doctor, and what the doctor recommended to my mother ended up traumatizing me. So I don't blame her. So what the doctor recommended is that she put me in a tub of warm water, let me just lay there for a while, and then go up inside my rectum with her finger and try to remove the blockage. This it's not a fun thing to go to, folks, to go through. And what made it worse is that her manipulation caused me to have an erection. She freaked out, called me a dirty little boy, and smacked me because she was angry. I mean, she didn't know what to think and or what to do. She didn't realize that it was her manipulation that was causing this. So I don't know how long this took, but it was quite a while. Eventually, I was able to pass the stool, and but the die had already been set. And to make matters much worse, sitting there in my own feces, floating in the water, I developed a bad kidney infection. Nephritis is what they called it. There was blood and albumin in my urine, and one of my kidneys was shutting down. Well, we didn't have all these fancy drugs that we have today back then. So I was ordered into bed rest for about 6 weeks. This was during the summertime of 1951, and I would sit there in the bed or lay there in the bed, and I was really, really, really sick and weak. And I would look out the back window and I would see all the kids in our neighborhood. We had 45 children on our block alone. This was due to the baby boom. And we always played together. Baseball, football, anything. We were tight. And I sat there and watched them play outside and felt so incredibly abandoned. And when this happens, I started thinking about how I must be just completely unlovable, because lovable children don't experience what I went through. So I felt the least of all human beings. I felt there was something wrong with me, that I was the problem in all of my relationships, that there was something wrong with me. And this is a root that goes very deeply inside a wounded child such as I was. And again, I don't tell you all this because I want your sympathy. God forbid. I'm telling you this because I'm going to be talking about sex and about how easily the concept of loving people gets twisted into one of supreme hatred and anger and rage. Through my, I used to collect butterflies as a child, and so I would wander through the fields and forests near our home, and there were plenty of wide open spaces. And I found a little, kind of like an encampment in the trees where teenagers, it seemed to me, were drinking, carousing, and there were beer bottles and beer. It was just it was a place where young people gathered to entertain themselves, and it was littered with men's magazines. So that had a great impact on my mind. By age 10, I got caught drawing pictures of women in bondage. I used Tarzan comic books as my outline, but I had no idea what I was talking about. It just seemed to tickle that thing inside me that said there was something wrong with me. And I will tell you further stories about this because you need to understand, people need to understand trauma and trauma responses. If we spent just a little bit of the money on studying human beings, the things that cannot be measured in a person, we would do a much greater service to society than anything else. Because let me tell you, there are a whole lot of people in the world today who were traumatized sexually as little boys and little girls. And how this impacted their lives is something that you really need to know about. And so I am willing to share these intimate stories with you. And I hope you'll stay tuned, because this is really an explanation for you on why I call myself, a commentary. Because, I may know a lot of things, or I may think I know a lot of things, but you always have to take into account the possibility, because I'm human, that I could be wrong. Because, as I tell you in all of my episodes, I'm really just a commentary.